Have you ever noticed how much energy it takes to outrun yourself? We go through our days, filling every spare second with noise, adjusting our plans, or pacing through routines just to avoid a single moment of quiet. It is a subtle, invisible kind of survival mode. You aren't necessarily in any physical danger, but your body behaves as though you are. Your shoulders are perpetually tense. Your jaw is clenched without you even realizing it. And your chest feels tight, as if you are constantly waiting for a sudden storm to hit. We build these thick, protective walls around our hearts, thinking that if we stay guarded enough, if we stay busy enough, nothing can hurt us. But those same walls keep us trapped on the inside. You end up feeling like a stranger in your own life, watching yourself perform tasks rather than actually living them. It is deeply, profoundly exhausting to live every day as if you are your own greatest threat. Think about how this shows up in the smallest, most ordinary moments of your day. It's that immediate urge to turn on background music or a podcast the second you walk into an empty house, not because you want to listen, but because the silence feels heavy. It's the way you map out your weekend with back-to-back tasks, convincing yourself that you are just being productive, when the truth is that a free afternoon feels terrifying. When we have nothing to do, the thoughts we've been pushing away finally catch up to us. We run because we are afraid of what we will find if we stop. We fear that if we sit still, the sadness we've ignored will overwhelm us, or the regrets we've buried will demand to be heard. So, we keep moving. We clean the kitchen countertop for the third time. We organize old files, or we mentally rehearse conversations that happened years ago, all to keep our minds occupied. But this constant movement comes at a terrible price. When you are always running, you can never truly rest. Even when you are lying down to sleep, your mind is still racing, pacing the floors of your consciousness, looking for the next problem to solve or the next memory to avoid. You become exhausted, not just in your muscles, but in your very soul. You find yourself feeling depleted even after a full night's sleep because your mind never actually dropped its guard. You are carrying the weight of a defender who refuses to put down the sword, even when the battle ended years ago. We tell ourselves that we will rest tomorrow, or next week, or once everything is finally settled. But things are never completely settled, and the running becomes a habit that is hard to break. The tragedy of this exhaustion is that it cuts us off from the very things that could heal us. In our effort to numb the uncomfortable feelings, we accidentally numb the joyful ones too. When you block out your fear and vulnerability, you also block out your capacity to feel deep peace, connection, and contentment. You look at a beautiful sunset or sit with someone you care about, but you feel miles away, trapped behind the fog of your own hyper-vigilance. You are physically present, but emotionally, you are still running a marathon on a treadmill, going nowhere but burning all your fuel. It takes an immense amount of courage to realize that the person you are running from is just you, a version of you that is tired, hurt, and desperately wanting to come home. The exhaustion you feel right now is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign that you have been strong for far too long. It is your system gently whispering that it cannot keep up this pace forever. You do not have to wait for everything to be perfect before you allow your feet to heavy and stop. You can choose right now, in the middle of the mess and the unanswered questions, to take one deep breath and simply stand still. We often treat our anxiety, our sudden panics, and our deep-seated fears as enemies that need to be completely defeated. When a sudden wave of worry hits your chest, your immediate, instinctive reaction is to fight it, to lecture yourself out of it, or to force it down as deep as it can go. You feel angry at your own mind for betraying you, for making a beautiful day feel dark and heavy. But that internal alarm isn't trying to sabotage you. It is just a part of you that is absolutely terrified and trying its best to keep you safe. It is a voice from your past that learned somewhere along the way that the world isn't a reliable place. When the alarm sounds, it isn't an act of malice. It is a desperate cry for protection. Think about how this alarm catches you completely off guard in your daily life. You could be sitting in a warm, peaceful room, surrounded by people who love you, or working quietly on a project you enjoy. Everything on the outside is perfectly fine. Yet, out of nowhere, a suffocating sense of unease settles over you. Your heart begins to race, your breathing turns shallow, and your mind starts frantically searching for a reason why. Why do I feel this way? What is wrong with me? Because you cannot find an immediate threat in the room. You turn that fear inward and assume that you are the danger, or that something terrible is about to happen. But your mind isn't reacting to what is happening right now. It is reacting to an old, unhealed memory, mistaking a harmless moment in the present for a painful moment from your past. It shows up when a friend takes a little longer than usual to answer a message, and your stomach instantly drops, convincing you that they are angry with you or leaving you. It shows up when a supervisor asks to speak with you, and instead of thinking it's a routine update, your mind immediately prepares for the absolute worst-case scenario. These are not signs that you are broken or dramatic. They are signs that your internal alarm system is highly sensitive because it was forced to protect you during times when things truly were chaotic, unpredictable, or hurtful. Your system learned to stay turned up to the highest volume just to make sure you would never be caught off guard again. But living with an alarm that never shuts off is an incredibly lonely and punishing way to exist. It keeps you in a state of constant emergency, burning through your emotional reserves until you feel completely hollowed out. True emotional safety begins when we stop treating our fear like a character flaw and start viewing it as a signal that some part of us is hurting and asking for reassurance. When the alarm goes off, instead of getting angry or trying to swallow the panic, what if you took a soft breath and spoke to yourself like someone you deeply care about? What if you acknowledged the fear without letting it take the wheel? It takes a beautiful, gentle shift in perspective to look at your anxiety and say, I see you. I know you are terrified right now, and I know you are just trying to protect me. Thank you for trying to keep me safe, but we are okay right now. We are not back there anymore. We are here, and we are safe. When you meet your internal alarm with compassion instead of judgment, something incredible happens. The screaming voice softens into a whisper. The tightness in your chest begins to give way, even if just a little bit. You begin to teach your nervous system, day by day, moment by moment, that it doesn't have to fight a ghost from the past to survive the present. Many of us try to build a sense of safety through absolute certainty. We walk through our lives trying to hold on to everything with a tight, unyielding grip, believing that if we can just manage every single detail, we will finally be safe. We endlessly rehearse conversations in our heads hours before they even happen, practicing exactly what we will say and trying to guess how the other person will respond. We try to predict every single possible outcome of a small decision, paralyzing ourselves with the fear of making the wrong choice. We constantly review past events, replaying old conversations late at night, agonizing over a misplaced word or a perceived mistake, looking for the exact moment where things went wrong. We think to ourselves, if I can just anticipate every single problem, if I can just see the danger before it arrives, I won't ever have to feel blindsided or hurt again. But control is a fragile, heartbreaking substitute for peace. It is a relentless master that demands your absolute, undivided attention every second of the day. It requires you to stay hyper-vigilant, constantly reading between the lines, analyzing every subtle look on a colleague's face, decoding every short text message, and monitoring every slight shift in the atmosphere of a room. You become an investigator in your own life, always looking for evidence that the other shoe is about to drop. Carl Jung once observed, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." When we spend all of our limited, precious energy trying to micromanage our environment and the people around us, we leave absolutely no room to breathe, let alone grow into who we truly want to be. We are so busy trying to prevent the worst from happening that we miss out on the good that is already here. Think about how exhausting it is to carry the responsibility of keeping the entire world from falling apart. When you live with the illusion of control, every unexpected change feels like a personal failure. If a plan falls through, if someone changes their mind, or if an unforeseen obstacle appears, you don't just see it as a normal part of life. You see it as a sign that you didn't think ahead enough, that you weren't smart enough, or that you let your guard down. You blame yourself for not predicting the unpredictable. You tie your sense of worth to your ability to keep everything running perfectly, which means you are always just one surprise away from a total emotional collapse. It is a beautiful but exhausting trap we build for ourselves, born out of a deep desire to never feel helpless again. The truth we often run from is that life is inherently unpredictable, and no amount of worrying can change that. You cannot control how other people feel about you. You cannot control the twists and turns of tomorrow, and you cannot rewrite the pages of yesterday. But realizing this doesn't have to be terrifying. It can actually be the moment you finally start to breathe. True safety doesn't come from ensuring that nothing bad will ever happen to you. It comes from knowing that if something does happen, you will be okay. It comes from trusting your own capacity to navigate the unknown, step by step. When you slowly begin to loosen your grip, your hands finally become free to hold on to the present moment, allowing you to lay down the crushing weight of a future you were never meant to carry alone. Think about the sheer, crushing weight of the armor you have been wearing for all these years. It is a heavy, invisible suit of iron that you put on a long time ago to make sure you could survive the coldest seasons of your life. It shows up in the habit of quickly saying, "I'm fine," with a tight smile when you are secretly drowning underneath the surface. It is the deep-seated need to always be the strong one, the fixer, the reliable pillar who takes care of everyone else's pain while quietly hiding your own. That armor might have been absolutely necessary once. It protected you when things around you were chaotic, unpredictable, or unsafe, acting as a shield between your tender heart and a world that felt too harsh to handle. But the tragedy of armor is that it doesn't know the difference between a threat and a gift. It becomes a prison when your environment changes and you no longer need to fight to exist. When you live behind a shield, you are safe from being hurt, but you are also entirely cut off from being loved. You cannot feel the warmth of a genuine connection when you are constantly viewing every relationship through the lens of self-defense. To feel safe in your own mind and heart, you have to slowly, patiently practice letting that shield down, even if it is just an inch at a time. This doesn't mean becoming reckless or throwing away your boundaries. It means realizing that you are resilient enough to handle a difficult emotion without it completely destroying you. It means recognizing that you no longer live in the place that hurt you. Shifting from armor to presence is the brave act of arriving in the room you are actually standing in, rather than staying braced for a battle that ended years ago. Think about what it feels like to live in total presence instead of constant defense. It means sitting at a table with someone you care about and actually hearing their words, rather than silently calculating how to protect yourself if they leave. It means looking at a quiet afternoon and allowing your body to sink into the couch, letting your muscles go completely soft, instead of feeling an underlying panic that you should be preparing for the next crisis. When we are wrapped in armor, we are always living 5 steps ahead, scouting the horizon for danger. When we shift to presence, we finally drop our feet into the current moment. We allow ourselves to feel the texture of the life we have built, to feel the actual temperature of the air, and to acknowledge that, right now, the room is quiet and the danger is not here. It is a slow and terrifying transition to make because the armor feels familiar, while vulnerability feels like standing naked in the wind. You might feel a sudden urge to pull the shield back up the moment a conversation gets a little too real or a feeling gets a little too deep. That is completely normal. Healing is not about tearing the armor off all at once and forcing yourself to be exposed. It is about gently talking to yourself through the fear. It is looking inward when your chest starts to tighten and saying, "It is okay to soften. We are allowed to be seen. We don't have to fight to be safe anymore." Every time you choose to stay present with an uncomfortable feeling instead of running away or getting angry, you chip away at the iron. You begin to realize that the true source of your safety was never the heavy armor on the outside, but the undeniable, quiet strength of the heart beating within it. Imagine your mind as a house. For a very long time, you might have been locking certain feelings away in the basement. Sadness, anger, regret, or a deep, heavy loneliness. You pretend they aren't there, turning up the volume of your daily life, keeping your schedule packed, and distracting yourself with anything you can find just to drown out the noise from below. But no matter how hard you try to ignore them, you can still hear them knocking against the floorboards late at night when the rest of the world goes quiet. You can feel them pressing against your chest when you least expect it. What if, instead of keeping that basement door locked and barricaded, you walked down the stairs, opened it, and invited those feelings upstairs? What if you gave them a seat at the table? We spend so much of our lives running from our own internal landscape, treating our difficult emotions as if they are trespassers or defects that need to be erased. When sadness arrives, we tell ourselves to snap out of it. When anger flares, we feel guilty and try to swallow it down. But when we allow our feelings to simply exist without immediately judging them as good or bad, their terrifying intensity actually begins to soften. An emotion only screams when it feels completely ignored. When you look at it directly, it no longer has to fight for your attention. Anger often just wants to protect your boundaries and point out where you've been hurt. Sadness just wants to acknowledge a loss and help you grieve. Loneliness is just a gentle reminder that you crave deep, meaningful connection. They are not trying to tear your house down. They are just waiting for you to listen. Think about how much peace comes from ending the war with yourself. It looks like sitting on the edge of your bed on a heavy afternoon and saying, "I am deeply sad right now." And that is completely okay. It means letting the tears fall without calling yourself weak, or letting yourself feel the heat of frustration without labeling yourself as a bad person. For so long, we have been taught that emotional maturity means staying perfectly level, calm, and unaffected at all times. But true safety doesn't come from being a hollow shell that never feels anything. It comes from becoming a spacious, welcoming host who can sit with a painful feeling and say, "I see you. You are allowed to be here for as long as you need to be. When you invite your emotions to the table, you realize that they are not permanent residents. They are just visitors passing through. They come with a message, and once they feel heard, they naturally pack up and leave on their own. The danger isn't the emotion itself. The danger is the exhaustion of trying to hold the door shut against it. When you finally pull out a chair for your sadness or your fear, you stop being afraid of your own mind. You begin to trust that you can survive a dark hour or a difficult wave of feeling because you are no longer fighting it. You are simply sitting with it, keeping yourself company in the dark, and waiting together for the morning to come. Healing is not a straight line, and it certainly does not happen overnight. It is a slow, often messy process of unlearning the deeply ingrained belief that you have to constantly earn your right to feel secure. Many of us grew up believing, without even realizing it, that our value was strictly tied to how much we could achieve, how much we could produce, or how helpful we could be to the people around us. We learned to associate stillness with laziness and boundary setting with selfishness. Unlearning that means catching yourself when you start to feel a sudden wave of guilt just for resting on a quiet Sunday afternoon, or when your heart begins to race because you have to apologize for simply expressing a different opinion. It is a daily, moment-by-moment choice to remind yourself that your worth is not tied to your utility, and that your internal space deserves to be a sanctuary, not a courtroom. Think about how deeply rooted these old patterns really are. You might find yourself frantically tidying up or looking for something, anything, to fix the moment you have a free hour, because sitting still feels like an admission of failure. Your mind starts whispering that you are falling behind, that you aren't doing enough, or that if you stop moving, everything you've worked so hard to build will come crashing down. This is the conditioning of survival. It is the voice of an old environment that only celebrated you when you were performing, achieving, or taking care of someone else's needs. When you begin the process of unlearning, the silence doesn't feel peaceful at first. It feels loud, uncomfortable, and heavy with judgment. You have to learn to sit through that initial discomfort without giving in to the urge to rescue yourself with more tasks. It shows up when you try to say no to a request that you simply do not have the emotional capacity to handle. As the word leaves your mouth, a wave of panic hits your stomach. You want to immediately take it back, to make excuses, or to over-explain yourself just to keep the other person happy. Unlearning means staying with that panic, breathing through it, and choosing not to rescue the other person from their disappointment at the expense of your own peace. It is the realization that you are allowed to have limits, and that saying no to someone else is often the only way to say a necessary, life-saving yes to yourself. It is a grueling, brave kind of work because you are actively rewriting the rules you have lived by for decades. This road requires an immense amount of patience with your own progress. There will be days when you fall right back into the old habits, Days when you overextend yourself, let your boundaries slip, and end up completely depleted, wondering why you haven't figured this out yet. When that happens, the temptation is to judge yourself harshly, to treat your relapse as proof that you are unfixable. But unlearning is not about being perfect. It is about how you treat yourself when you stumble. Healing means looking at your slip-ups, not with anger, but with a soft, understanding heart. It is whispering to yourself, "Of course I went back to the old way. It's what kept me safe for so long. But I can choose differently next time." Every single time you choose self-compassion over self-punishment, you take another step down that long road, gradually turning your mind into a place where you can finally rest. As we look deeper into ourselves, we eventually encounter the parts of our personality that we aren't proud of. The envy we felt when someone else succeeded, the bitterness we hold on to, or the times we reacted poorly out of sheer exhaustion. It is easy to feel unsafe when we realize we aren't perfect. We tend to hide these fragments away, terrified that if anyone saw them, they would leave us, or worse, that these flawed pieces prove we are inherently unlovable. Carl Jung beautifully captured this tension when he wrote, "The acceptance of oneself is the only moral problem, and the whole of a man's topograph." He was pointing us toward the profound truth that wholeness requires us to look at our hidden sides with honesty rather than condemnation. When you meet your flaws with compassion instead of shame, the mind stops being a battleground. Think about how heavy it is to carry the secret belief that you are fundamentally broken. We spend so much time curating an external version of ourselves that is patient, kind, and always put together. But when we are alone, the hidden parts of us surface. It is that sudden, ugly flash of resentment toward a person who seems to have an easier life than you. It is the cold, defensive wall you build when someone tries to give you constructive feedback. It is the silent, burning anger you feel when your needs are overlooked. When these feelings rise, we often panic. We judge ourselves harshly, thinking, "A good person wouldn't feel this way." We try to exile these thoughts, punishing ourselves with a harsh internal dialogue. But pushing them into the dark doesn't make them disappear. It just makes them grow stronger, manifesting as a constant, underlying sense of guilt. What if we changed the way we looked at these hidden pieces? Those parts of you that feel angry, bitter, or envious are not evidence of malice. They are simply injured, neglected parts of your history that have been left out in the cold. Envy is often just a wounded part of you, revealing what you desperately want, but feel you aren't allowed to have. Bitterness is usually the protector of a boundary that was crossed too many times without an apology. Your sharp reactions are frequently just the cry of a system that is completely overwhelmed and has nothing left to give. When you begin to view your shadow through the lens of pain rather than badness, your relationship with yourself changes. You stop trying to eradicate these parts and start trying to understand them. Meeting yourself with compassion looks like sitting with your regrets and refusing to let them define your future. It means looking at the times you fell short and saying, I did the best I could with the tools and the awareness I had at the moment. It is a slow, radical act of grace to look at your most difficult traits and offer them a soft place to land. When you stop fighting your own darkness, you deprive it of its power over you. You realize that you do not have to be a perfect person to be a safe person for yourself. Wholeness does not mean eliminating your flaws. It means expanding your heart wide enough to hold both your light and your shadows with an unshakable, tender kindness. We often talk about the importance of setting boundaries with other people, learning to say no to demanding friends, setting limits at work, or keeping distance from toxic dynamics. But we rarely talk about the boundaries we need to set within our own minds. Emotional safety means recognizing when your thoughts have stopped being helpful reflections and have instead started to spiral into a loop of harsh self-criticism or terrifying worst-case scenarios. It means noticing the exact moment you cross the line from healthy processing into emotional self-sabotage and gently choosing to step away from the edge. It looks like telling yourself, we are not doing this right now. We are not solving the problems of the next 5 years at 2 o'clock in the morning. It is about building a protective barrier around your current moment so that the anxieties of tomorrow do not rob you of the peace you have earned today. Think about how often you allow your mind to mistreat you. You wouldn't sit quietly in a room while a stranger listed every mistake you've ever made, detailed every flaw on your body, or reminded you of your most embarrassing moments from years ago. Yet, we allow our own minds to do this to us for hours on end, usually when we are at our most vulnerable. We sit in silence and let the inner critic shout, believing that if we listen long enough, we can somehow prevent future mistakes. But that is a lie. That internal bully isn't keeping you safe. It is keeping you paralyzed. Setting an internal boundary means stepping in as the adult in the room and saying, I will not let you speak to me that way anymore. It is a conscious, active choice to protect yourself from your own destructive thoughts. This shows up in the way you handle your worry. When a genuine problem arises, it is normal to look for solutions. But when your mind begins to spin into catastrophic thinking, imagining the worst possible outcomes, creating elaborate tragedies that haven't happened, and making you feel the grief of a loss that isn't real, that is your cue to implement a boundary. It looks like taking a deep breath, placing a hand on your chest, and saying, that story has not happened. Right now, in this room, I am okay. It is a slow process of training yourself to stop treating every fearful thought as an absolute truth. Just because your mind manufactures a terrifying scenario does not mean you are required to sit there and watch it play out. You have the right to change the channel. Creating these boundaries requires a great deal of tenderness and consistency. Your mind has been running these negative loops for a very long time, and it will try to fall back into them out of habit. When you catch yourself spiraling for the 3rd time in an hour, the goal is not to get angry, or punish yourself for worrying. The goal is to gently, patiently lead yourself back to the present. It is like guiding a frightened child away from a scary window. You don't yell at them for being afraid. You take their hand and lead them somewhere safe. Every single time you choose to draw a line within your own mind, every time you refuse to entertain a thought that degrades your worth or feeds your panic, you are building an unshakable inner sanctuary. You are proving to yourself that your mind can finally become a safe place to live. When your mind feels like an unpredictable, chaotic place, the absolute best anchor you have is the physical reality right in front of you. Fear always lives somewhere else. It thrives in the uncertain future or loops endlessly in the painful past. But safety? Safety can only ever be found in the immediate present. Think about those moments when your thoughts are spinning so fast that you feel completely disconnected from your own skin, as if you are floating somewhere above your life, paralyzed by a heavy sense of dread. In those exact moments, the quickest way back to peace is to drop your attention down into the physical world. Look at the solid weight of your feet pressing against the floor. Feel the texture of the fabric on your sleeve, or listen to the quiet, steady rhythm of the breath moving in and out of your lungs. These simple physical realities are undeniable proof that right now, in this exact second, you are actually okay. Think about how often we abandon the present moment because we are terrified of what might happen next. We sit at dinner with people we love, but our minds are miles away, worrying about a difficult conversation we have to have next week. We take a walk outside, but instead of noticing the warmth of the sun or the sound of the wind, we are replaying an argument from 3 years ago. We are physically here, but emotionally, we are living in a ghost world of our own making. Grounding yourself means making the conscious, gentle choice to pull your awareness back to the room you are actually standing in. It is looking at the objects around you, the light filtering through a window, the shape of a coffee mug, the stillness of the walls, and letting those ordinary things remind you that the worst scenarios your mind is creating are not happening right now. They are just thoughts, and thoughts cannot hurt you if you don't feed them. It takes practice to trust the present moment, especially if you have spent a lifetime believing that staying braced for disaster is the only way to survive. You might feel a sudden surge of panic when you try to quiet your mind, as if letting your guard down is an invitation for something terrible to happen. But true grounding is not about forcing your mind to be completely blank. It is about choosing where you place your focus. When a heavy wave of anxiety starts to rise, instead of riding that wave into a panic, you can choose to find a single point of stability. It could be the sensation of cool air entering your nose, the warmth of your hands resting in your lap, or the literal gravity pulling you safely into your chair. By focusing on the tangible, physical truth of the right now, you take the fuel away from the fire of your anxiety. You are here, you are breathing, and you are entirely safe in this specific second. The past is already gone and cannot touch you. And the future is a shadow that hasn't arrived. All you ever have to handle, all you ever have to survive, is the next 60 seconds. When you break life down into these small, manageable increments of time, the overwhelming weight of your life begins to lift. You realize that you don't have to figure everything out today, and you don't have to heal every old wound by tomorrow. You just have to be right here, in this room, inhabiting your body, and trusting that this single, quiet moment is enough to sustain you. Ultimately, learning to feel safe in your own mind and heart is less about changing who you are and more about coming home to who you have always been beneath the protective layers. It is the profound, quiet realization that you are the sky, not the weather. The storms of anxiety, the heavy clouds of grief, and the sudden gales of self-doubt will blow through your life, sometimes casting dark shadows that make it feel like the light is gone forever. But those storms cannot alter the sky itself. They cannot scratch it. They cannot break it. And they cannot change its true nature. By choosing to stay present with yourself, by offering your tired heart the exact same kindness you so easily give to others, you build an unshakable foundation. You finally stop looking for outside validation, outside rescue, or outside peace, and you become your own safe place to land. Think about how far you have traveled just to find a version of yourself that felt acceptable. You have spent years molding your personality, hiding your vulnerability, and carrying burdens that were never yours to bear, all in the hope of finally feeling secure, loved, and enough. You looked for safety in achievements, in relationships, or in the perfect control of your daily routine. But safety was never waiting for you at the end of a long list of accomplishments, and it wasn't hidden in someone else's approval. It was always right here, quietly waiting inside the moments when you chose to be kind to your own flaws. Coming home to yourself means ending the search. It means looking into your own eyes in the mirror, acknowledging every single fracture and scar, and deciding that you are worth keeping exactly as you are right now. It looks like the moment you stop treating your sensitivity as a defect and start treating it as your greatest depth. It is the moment you sit down in the quiet of your room and realize that you don't need to be fixed, because you were never truly broken to begin with. You were just hurt, and you were just trying to survive. When you come home to yourself, the relationship you have with your own mind undergoes a beautiful, permanent shift. You no longer see your thoughts as an enemy territory you have to navigate with caution. Instead, your mind becomes a gentle space where you are allowed to make mistakes, allowed to feel confused, and allowed to rest without feeling like you are falling behind. You become an ally to your own soul. This homecoming is not a destination you reach once and never leave. It is a daily, intentional choice to return to your center. There will still be days when the world feels overwhelming and the old armor feels tempting. But the difference now is that you know the way back. You know how to breathe through the tightness in your chest, how to quiet the inner critic, and how to stand firm in your own worth. You have built a sanctuary within your own heart that no external circumstance can tear down. You can take a deep breath, let your shoulders drop completely, and smile at the quiet peace settling into your chest. You are no longer outrunning your shadow. You are no longer fighting the alarm, and you are no longer hiding behind a shield. You are finally here, completely present, safely and beautifully home. If you have made it this path with me, take a long, deep breath and let it out slowly. Feel the literal expansion of your chest, the subtle drop of your shoulders, and the weight of your body supported by the ground beneath you. You are here. You have listened to the whispers of your own exhaustion, faced the ringing of your internal alarms, looked at the fragile edges of your need for control, and begun the brave work of unlearning the rules that kept you small. You have pulled out a chair for your heaviest emotions, looked into the shadows of your own heart with compassion, and drawn a gentle line of defense within your own thoughts to protect your peace. You have found your footing in the present moment, and you have taken the first, incredibly brave steps toward coming home to yourself. But as we reach the end of this shared reflection, it is vital to acknowledge a truth that we often forget in our eagerness to be healed. The journey does not end because the words stop. True emotional safety is not a permanent trophy you win, nor is it a flawless state of mind where you will never feel afraid, anxious, or lonely ever again. To expect yourself to never slip back into old patterns is to set a trap for your own spirit. Healing is a living, breathing cycle. There will be mornings, months from now, where you wake up and feel that familiar, cold grip of anxiety tightening in your stomach for no apparent reason. There will be evenings when an unexpected setback or a difficult interaction sends your mind spiraling right back into catastrophic thinking, making you feel as though you haven't learned anything at all. When those moments happen, and they will, I need you to remember that a relapse into fear is not a failure. It is simply a sign that you are a living being with a history. Your nervous system has spent years, perhaps decades, practicing hyper-vigilance. It cannot rewrite its entire language in a single season. When the old armor feels tempting, or when you find yourself pacing the floors of your mind trying to control the uncontrollable, do not meet yourself with anger or disappointment. Do not let the inner critic tell you that you are back at square one. Instead, recognize that this is the exact moment where your new practice begins. Safety is not the absence of the storm. It is the absolute certainty that you know how to find your way back to the shelter you have built inside yourself. Think of this inner sanctuary as a physical place you have painstakingly constructed, brick by brick, through every choice to be kind to your pain. Every time you catch yourself spiraling and choose to look at your feet on the floor instead of the tragedy in your head, you lay a stone. Every time you let a tear fall without calling yourself weak, you reinforce the walls. Every time you tell your inner critic that you will no longer tolerate its cruelty, you hang a lock on the door. This sanctuary belongs to you completely. No one else gave it to you, and no external circumstance can take it away. It is your sovereign territory, a quiet space in the center of your soul that remains entirely untouched by the chaos of the outside world. As you step back into the rhythm of your daily life, carry this awareness with you like a quiet flame. You do not need to perform for your safety anymore. You do not need to prove your worth to the room, or justify your right to take up space, or pretend to be stronger than you feel. You are allowed to be a beautiful, unfinished work in progress. You are allowed to have days where you are soft, vulnerable, and completely uncertain of what comes next. Carl Jung's reminder that we are what we choose to become is a lifelong invitation. It means that every single sunrise offers you a fresh choice to treat yourself with a little more grace, to let the world be unpredictable, and to trust that you are resilient enough to handle the waves as they come. The world outside will continue to be loud, fast, and demanding. It will try to pull you back into the race, whispering that you aren't doing enough or being enough. But you now carry a secret knowledge. You know that the greatest peace you will ever find is not waiting for you at the top of a mountain of achievements, but in the quiet, ordinary spaces where you choose to be your own friend. You know that your heart is a safe place to land. So, take another deep breath, soften your gaze, and step forward into your life. You are not running anymore. You are not hiding. You are simply walking forward, step by single step, enveloped in your own presence, anchored in your own heart, and beautifully, irrevocably free.